This is your Succession Reading Packet Read Aloud. Please follow along as I read out loud. In 1988, a huge fire raged through Yellowstone National Park. After the fire, all that remained in that part of the forest were thousands of blackened tree trunks sticking out of the ground like charred toothpicks. But within a few months, signs of life had returned. New grass shoots were followed by tree seedlings. The forest was coming back. The forest community in Yellowstone had begun to recover from the fire. A community is all the different organisms that live together in an area. A community in an ecosystem is in equilibrium or a state of balance when the numbers and species of organisms in it do not change suddenly. Events such as fires, floods, volcanoes, and hurricanes disrupt the equilibrium of a community by changing it drastically in a very short time. But even without a disaster, communities sometimes change. Succession is the series of predictable changes that occur in a community over time. After a fire, volcano, or other disaster, succession enables an ecosystem to recover. There are two main types of ecological succession, primary and secondary. The picture at the top shows an area that's been an ecosystem that has been disturbed by a fire. And the second picture, picture B, is the regrowth of that ecosystem after the fire. It's repairing itself. That is an example of succession. One example. Next page. Primary succession. Primary succession is the series of changes that occur in an area where no ecosystem previously existed. Such an area might be a new island formed by the eruption of an undersea volcano or an area of rock uncovered by a melting sheet of ice. The scenes in Figure 23 show an area after a volcanic eruption. At first, there is no soil, just ash and rock. The first species to populate the area are called pioneer species. Pioneer species are often lichens and mosses carried to the area by wind or water. These species can grow on bare rocks with little or no soil. As these organisms grow, they help break up the rocks. When they die, they enrich the thin layer of soil that is forming. Over time, plant seeds land in the new soil and begin to grow. The specific plants that grow depend on the biome. For example, in a cool northern area, early seedlings might include alder and cottonwood trees. As the soil grows older and richer, these trees might be replaced by spruce and hemlock. Eventually, primary succession may lead to a community of organisms in equilibrium, which does not change drastically unless the ecosystem is disturbed. Reaching this stable community can take centuries. So here's the picture they're talking about where the ecosystem's covered with ash, no soil, just rock and ash. Over the years, moss and lichen have been flown in by the wind, land on rock, start breaking it up over the years, and create soil, which allows plant life to start growing, and then many years later, you have bigger plants growing. That's primary succession, starting from scratch. No ecosystem has ever existed there, no soil. Now let's read about secondary succession. The changes following the Yellowstone fire were an example of secondary succession. Secondary succession is the series of changes that occur after a disturbance in an existing ecosystem. Natural disturbances that have this effect include fires, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Human activities such as farming, logging, or mining may also disturb an ecosystem. Unlike primary succession, secondary succession occurs in a place where an ecosystem has previously existed. Secondary succession restores the ecosystem to a state in which equilibrium can be maintained. However, the ecosystem may not be exactly as it was before the disturbance. Secondary succession occurs somewhat more rapidly than primary succession. Consider, for example, an abandoned farm field. After a century, a hardwood forest is developing. This forest is very stable and will remain for a long time. So secondary succession will begin with an ecosystem and there's a disturbance to it. Whether it's caused by humans or if it's caused by a natural disaster, there's been a disturbance. In this case, this field has been abandoned by people and they've left the area. So the ecosystem is going to repair itself to like it was before humans were there. and start regrowing bigger trees, and then eventually a forest over the many years. So those are the two types of succession, which would be primary and secondary. So these are your succession reading packet. Hope it helped.